The great ones, they're different. They really are. Not better, just different. Sure, there's a physical power, a mental strength, a complex but resolute constitution too. There's a whole lot more than just the measurables. That's something else, that intangible. It separates us from them. Welcome to the Legends series on Andy Raymond Unfiltered. I'll be honest with you, unfiltered. Some of the guys I've met along the journey, well, let's just say they're nothing like they portray. That's not my type. Then there's the ones whose honesty and simplicity are magnetising. Friendly, genuine, legitimate. Call it what you like. I term it decent. That's where this bloke sits. But who is Craig Bellamy?
I don't think I've ever been asked that question. You're probably right there. But, I just see myself as a pretty simple guy that enjoys living a pretty simple life. Sometimes it gets a bit complicated because of the work I do. But at the end of the day, I like simplicity in my life. I'm very family orientated. I think probably my best trait, I suppose, would probably, I'm willing to do whatever needs to be done at the things I see as important. So as I said, there's obviously family, but also, me footy, which is me work, So I've always been the opinion, if I'm going to do something, I want to try and do it the best I can. So I haven't probably got a whole heap of interests outside those two things, or like I say, there's a few things I enjoy doing, but as I said, they're the main two things. I want to try and do those things as well as I can.
60 years of age, your 18th season as a coach. Do you still get the same enjoyment from the position you did as a younger man?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I sort of, sometimes it's hard to think back that far and think, what I was feeling or what I was thinking, but there's obviously some, the game's changed a lot in some areas, obviously on the field too. Obviously there's always progression made, as time moves on, and technology and, technology and I suppose the technical sides of the game, but also the physical sides of the game as well, So, like I say, there's a lot more, I suppose, spotlight on the game now, as far as on the field stuff, but also off-field stuff. And sometimes, it hurts, when you see people that, are getting sort of, ridiculed or pulled down when they don't really deserve that, and when that affects families, So at the end of the day, but as we were talking there earlier, that's seems to be part of society these days. So, but certainly, the game, I've always loved the game. Always will love the game. It's always been part of my life. I remember my grandfather and grandmother. They were, huge league followers. So that was my mum's parents, and she's always been that as well. My dad was a little bit different. He was more of I suppose he loved the bush. He loved fishing, and shooting and stuff like that. So, but footy was always, right at the top of the list for me, ever since I can remember.
Have the rewards and the reasons you coach changed over your years?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I think, to be very honest, I think when I first started head coaching, it was probably a little bit about me, in thinking about that. We all got, I suppose, an ego when we're younger, when we first come into a position that's higher than what it was last year, So I think I've, over the years, I've matured a bit, and just make sure that it's the decisions that I make and my way of thinking. It's got to be about the team and not about me as an individual, but also not about one certain individual in the club or the team or a small group. It's got to be about the group as a whole. And I think I've got a lot better at that. I think you probably I know whether you feel a little bit more comfortable in your position at that. But over the years, I think that's one thing, or one area that I've probably got better at.
You've told me before you're constantly learning. Is that learning about coaching football or learning about man management and extracting the best from different individuals?
Yeah, I think that, the second one there for sure. I think I probably had that mentality a little bit that, what was good for one was good for everybody.
Yeah.
I probably thought that was the fair way to go too.
Yep.
But as I've gone on, I've realised that you've got to, treat people a little bit differently. I'm talking about, footy stuff as far as training and things like that, but also off-field stuff. Everyone, well, most guys, you end up. A lot of the real good footy players are unique characters as well. Then that's probably what makes them the players they are. So, like I say, I think at stages there's got to be, rule. I don't know if rules is the right word. That's probably a bit of a strong word, but the considerations you make, I think at times it's got to be for every individual in the group has got to be this or be that or do that or do this. But at other times, it's got to be about the individual. And as I said, I think as I've got more experience in this job, I think I've been able to pick that a little bit better than I would have, 15 years ago.
On that, how different are you from player to player? I'll pick two of your current mob, Cam Smith and Cameron Munster. It's like trying to compare Prince Charles and the Grim Reaper. They're two different guys off the footy field and couldn't be any more different. Does the same message and the same delivery work on two different characters?
I wouldn't say about work, but just going back to what I just said there a minute ago, like for some parts of their footy, with the team, with the club, with smaller groups, they will get treated exactly the same.
Yep.
But there's other parts where they won't. Obviously, as you say, they are completely and utterly different characters and very unique characters as well. But, as far as the physical preparation, Cameron Smith would get, he would get more time off training in the physical sense than Cameron Munster would, because of their age and how many games they've played. But if there's a issue that comes up that it's personal, well, again, they'll basically get treated the same there without a doubt.
Yep.
But having said that, and then when other things do come up, it's sometimes for some guys, you really want to. Well, they really want to have a talk about it. They really want, someone to help, where you'll see other guys that, you basically, this is my area, this is my problem, I'll sort it myself. They won't say it to you, but basically you get the message, keep your nose out of it, I'll sort it myself. So I think, picking the difference between those sort of things, and, and as you say, that's probably the opposite end of the spectrum, and some of the things that Cameron Munster does sometimes at training, I'm going to give someone a bit of a serve for that. But for Munster, that's what seems to work for him, So at the end of the day, it's just reading them, when they first come to the club, and then getting used to that and being able to, adapt to the situations that all the players come under at different times, but also sometimes it's a unique situation because of the unique personality that they are.
Any elite athlete will tell you it takes more than just being physically fit to be at your best. And our friends at Galaxy Finance can have you at the top of your financial game. From home loans to investments and self-managed super funds, they provide complete solutions. Call Galaxy Finance on 1300 91 7740 and mention you heard it on Andy Raymond Unfiltered to get an obligation-free chat to see how Galaxy Finance can assist you. For you, what's the hook of coaching? What is it most that you love about the job?
There's a few things and a few things you don't like about the job, but I think where I get most enjoyment now is when I see players make their debuts. Yep. With the Storms, without a doubt. Whether it be a first NRL game or whether it be just the first game with the Storm, but usually those guys that have really battled hard, and then it might be 22 or 23, they're finally making their first grade debut. I get a lot of joy out of that, but I also get a lot of satisfaction out of guys making their debuts for rep sides. When they first say play state of origin for New South Wales or Queensland, and when they play for their country, where they play for Australia, New Zealand, Tonga, Samoa, all those guys are so proud of those moments, and I think that's the most enjoyable thing that happens, to me during the year, is when those, like I say, they're just making their debuts with whatever team, and I love it when a guy makes his debut with the Storm, and he's really worked his ass off to get there. It's been he has not got there because he hasn't worked hard, but sometimes things go against you as far as injuries. Sometimes it's he's got a Cameron Munster or Cameron Smith in front of him, but when those guys get their opportunity after they've worked really hard and they've made a lot of sacrifice, that makes you feel real good.
What's the toughest part of the job, the part of the job that you hate the most?
Probably for me, the hardest part is when I've got to tell a player that we can't fit him into our squad next year. Sometimes if they've bored on themselves, it's probably not that hard of a job if they haven't worked as hard as they should, or there's part of their game that you've made, you've really spelled out to them. You need to improve in this area if you're going to play first grade, but you don't see them working on it. But the ones that, have worked really hard on it, they after every session or during the session, you see them, working hard on the things that you've got to improve here. And then after training, they're doing it again. Then you hear they might be in the gym, or they're asking one of the coaches to do some work with them, on their days off. When you have to tell those guys that, basically, you've done your best, but you just haven't got the talent, or we just can't fit in. That breaks your heart. And like I say, those sort of situations, they stand out to me more than any other probably situations that I've experienced in my career at the Storm. And I don't get any enjoyment out of that at all.
Is it addictive, the adrenaline rush of coaching and success and obstacles and failures?
For me, it's just, this is the job description, or this is the roles that you're playing. This is your responsibilities. Whatever comes up, you need to deal with it. I think game day is probably a little bit like that, to be quite honest. But I don't think there's any too many rushes. During the week, it's basically, for us, it's mainly routine, to be quite honest. Pretty systematic, I suppose. But certainly game day, especially the bigger games, that they can certainly give you a rush without a doubt.
I would describe you as a pretty cool dude. You've got a very relaxed manner about you, except for 2 40-minute periods on a weekend and the occasional half time. What happens?
I'm not quite sure there, Andy. And I think a lot of people that don't know me, think I'm a maniac all the time, but at stage, I've often thought about, especially I'm watching a game or doing a review on a game, and the camera's on me up in the box, and I do something. I think, what are you doing, you idiot? But I must say, and the next week I thought, I'm not gonna lose my cool again. But 2 or 3 weeks down the track, I do. So I suppose now I've been doing it for so long, I try not to worry too much about it, and just basically be accepting that, that's who I am, and that's what works for me. And as long as I'm not, way over the top. I'm just trying to let out a little bit of steam, or trying to let out. I just let out a little bit of steam, I suppose. So as long as I'm not doing too much damage to anybody else, I've sort of, I suppose, consoled myself with that's part of who I am. And,
Is it emotion? Is it passion? Is it the pressure you feel? Is it a combination of all of the above?
Yeah, I think it's all, a combination, to be quite honest. As I said earlier, I probably haven't done a whole heap of different things in my life, but whatever I've done, I've always tried to do the best I can. So that those couple of things I'm very passionate about. And I'm not quite sure about the pressure thing. At times, I seem to feel calmer, like in finals games, more so than games throughout the year. I'm not quite sure why that is. Obviously, I have been nervous, for some games, or some big games in the end of the year. But basically, seems as though the longer the season goes, the less nervous I get before games. So, I don't know how that works, but that seems to be how it works for me.
In between that football, pre-game, half-time, full-time, we've probably done a few hundred interviews together over the years, and not once in between those halves of football have you ever seemed flustered or even slightly anxious. It's obviously just a switch inside, internally, and a reaction, because you're able to turn that switch, I think, from my perspective anyway, on and off relatively easily and quickly.
Yeah, again, it's a little bit like my performance up in the box at times. Sometimes I'm not quite sure how that works, but I think, I was always, brought up by my mum and dad to make sure that, I respect people and respect situations. And, like I say, when I'm talking to someone, well, I respect, that I respect the questions they're asking me, and I respect that they've got a job to do. And, my job is to help them do their job the best they can as well. So, I think that's probably a little bit of a part of it, I'd imagine.
Blood pressure for a young man of your age, it should be, I read, 135/88. Have you ever monitored your numbers whilst at work, or are you afraid to?
No, there's been a couple of people wanting to do that actually, but all that's going to come of that's another story. So at the end of the day, it's I feel okay after games. I feel okay during the game. So we'll leave it at that.
On behalf of the fans, we get great enjoyment out of watching your blow-ups in the coach's box, but so too do others, your rivals. We interviewed your very good mate Ricky Stewart on episode 4, and he had this to say. Do you get a giggle out of seeing other coaches blow up? I know Craig Bellamy's a great mate of yours. It still makes me laugh. It just never gets old.
He's worse than me. He is a dickhead in the box, mate, honestly. He could be up by 18 and he's going off his head. And I must say, I sit back and laugh and laugh and laugh at him. And then I sit back and think, Jesus Christ, I bet you they're all sitting back laughing at me.
Oh, with mates like that, who needs enemies?
But exactly. The one thing I will, I don't usually retort or return, I suppose slander from Rick, because he's a lot smarter than me at that, because he does it to a lot more people and he does it a lot more often.
Yeah.
But the one thing I have never been guilty of is throwing a full bottle of water at one of our supporters. Like, I don't understand. I can understand the opposition supporters, but hey, Rick, mate, don't go throwing stones at me if you're throwing water bottles at your own fans, mate.
Yeah, too true. You got a lovely wife, Wendy, and family. What do they say when they see your emotion on TV, or is it a subject at House Bellamy that no one dares mention?
I think, Wendy's a little bit like Rick. She just takes the piss out of me, to be quite honest. And basically, I think especially her, but also my son, I think the word dickhead gets used a little bit after that. But my daughter's very understanding. Yeah, Rach is just such a sweet soul. She's never sort of bagged anyone. So if I want an opinion of someone, I'll ask her.
You're listening to Andy Raymond Unfiltered, the Legends series. We have corporate and private sponsorship packages available. You set the terms. For further information on how you can become part of the team, go to the website andyraymondunfiltered.com.au and hit the sponsorship tab. We hear about your halftime sprays. Do you go into the dressing room with a very strict purpose and plan and different plan each and every week? Or does emotion take over at halftime when you finally get the attention of your players?
That's changed a little bit. I've certainly got a routine or a system that I follow during the first half, and I've got some notes, but I've certainly got obviously the notes or the points change each week, but the system stays the same. Having said that, sometimes that gets thrown out the window if I feel we haven't been following the plan or there hasn't been enough effort put in. A couple of things, but I think you could even ask me players. I think I've probably had one or two blow-ups, I suppose what people would call blow-ups in the last probably 5 years, they were a lot more often early in my career. But as I said earlier, I think that, because of, I suppose, as I said, coming to a new job, it shouldn't have been, but it's a little bit about yourself. When you first start a job, it's a little bit of that ego, I suppose. But, at the end of the day, I'm a lot more experienced now, and, I know we don't need that certainly every week. But as I said, I usually got a plan. I usually, stick to that plan. As I said, over the last, 3 or 4 years, probably 2 or 3 times, I've been, stronger with a couple of areas I've been really disappointed with. But other than that, I'm usually, and sometimes if I am a little bit hot under the collar, at half time, by the time I walk down from the box, I've usually sort of found me cool again. So that's obviously helpful in those situations.
Some of the great old boxing trainers from generations past in the US used to agree on one thing, that during or in between rounds in a boxing match, because your athlete is fatigued, one positive message and one negative message is about the limit of what they're going to absorb. Are rugby league players similar in the fact that at halftime, by trying to flood them with information or messages, you're probably being counterproductive? Yeah,
I think so, without a doubt. I think there's I'm not quite sure the one of each. I know myself, sometimes I might give something we have to be better at. Sometimes it's just, hey, we're doing this well, so let's keep doing it. So there might be a couple of those things. Other times it might be one thing we're doing well, one thing that we planned on. Okay, the review of that is, we've done that really well, but we need to improve in these couple of areas. So all up, I'd probably try and keep to 3 or 4 messages. And it's, sometimes it might be less than that. Sometimes it might be a bit more individual, to individual players or individual groups, like a right-hand side or a left-hand side. So, depending on how that first half's gone, obviously. But, I really, agree with that. You can't flood them with too many messages. And that was probably something that I wasn't good at early in my career either, but now it's a lot more, the message is a lot stronger. We need to be, keep doing this, but we need to improve in this area.
If you had to self-analyse, what's the best spray you've delivered at halftime?
I remember it was probably about 2012, 13 perhaps. We were playing the Gold Coast at down in Amy, and I think we were down 10-0 or 12-0, and we were just playing, terrible, and with all due respect, the Gold Coast, they probably weren't playing that good either. They probably should have been, 20 or 30 in front of us. But, I sort of lost a little bit that day. So that's the one I remember. I'm sure some of the players, especially the long-term players, would probably remember, other times. But I remember that time, and I remember thinking walking back up to the box that took a lot out of me. It was like, I just run a marathon, and I'm thinking that can't be good for me. So, like I say, I don't think I've ever lost a lot like that before. Obviously, it wasn't a thing that I planned to do. Yeah. It just sort of come, but that was a bit of a sign for me that you just need to try not to get that worked up at halftime.
Has there been one reaction or comment back from a player that's caught you off, or do the players simply sit there like naughty school kids and not say a word at halftime?
Oh no, especially especially now, we want to involve them, and sometimes I'll come down, down from the box, and I'll come into I'm coming in the dressing room, so it might be 2 or 3 minutes after the players get in there. And Cameron Smith, it might be one of the other players too, like Munster will have a say, and Jeff Bromwich or Dale, they're always giving a little bit of advice to everybody, but it's usually obviously Cameron Smith. And sometimes, I can hear his voice, 30 seconds before I get in there. Wow. And then I come in and he finishes off what he's saying to the group. And I'm thinking, well, I just should have stayed in the box. Like at the end of the day, he's just about covered what I was going to say anyway. So I suppose when you think about it, we've been, he's been our captain, from 2006, I think, and playing he's been playing first grade ever since I got there. So I suppose we do think along similar lines, like as everyone would know, and with Cameron's experience, we want his opinion all the time. Yeah. So when he's ready to give an opinion, he'll give it, So like I say, sometimes, and it's probably only happened, like that the last 2 or 3 years, but sometimes I think, well, I might as well turn around and just go back up the box. Cameron's got it sorted, So, but like I say, it's great to have it's great to have players, like that around. And I think, even as as coaching, I suppose, philosophy, is, over the last 10 years, it's more about, I suppose, not players coaching themselves, but being more responsible for their actions and their preparation and whatever. So I think, I've probably gone along that line a little bit just by default, to be quite honest, just because I've been here that long. Just every now and then you need to change a few things up. But certainly, I think the players of today are a lot more self-reliant than probably what they were 15, 20 years ago.
Mentioned 15, 20 years ago. The world is changing, and how one addresses players has also changed in that time. Do you have to be mindful now that quite simply in 2020, you can't say things to people that were acceptable 15 to 20 years ago? Yeah,
obviously, life has changed and society's changed. And, I don't think I've ever got into too much trouble there. Like, with all due respect, probably when I was playing, which is going back, 30 years ago, 35 years, for whatever it is,
like TV.
But, exactly. But back in them days, I think things were, like you could say things in jest without getting into trouble for it. And most of it was always in jest, but, that's not the way the world is these days. So, but like I say, I've never had any sort of, anti-racial or discrimination of any kind. I was brought up to accept everybody as they are. So that hasn't been an issue for me. But like I say, sometimes you probably need to pull yourself up, because what we would have seen as a joke, when I was 25, ain't a joke no more. It's serious. So everyone's got to be aware of that, and I think most people are.
You mentioned Cameron Smith earlier. It's a 14-year working relationship. Are you mates? Is it coach and player. How do you describe the relationship?
Yeah, well, I think it's a bit longer than that now. I think it's about 18, 19 years now. So, so like I say, I'm probably too old to be his mate. So I'm his dad's age, So, but I think we are mates. I think we've been through a lot together. Like footy wise, and obviously when you're both of us have been at this footy club for so long. There's a lot of things that happen, footy wise that. Yep. I suppose makes a relationship stronger, but also things off the field as well, where we're supporting each other, or sometimes it's supporting other members of the club, when they've gone through a tough time. So I think as far as the footy goes, we're always aware of, like, I'm the coach, he's the captain, and he's a player, and obviously. From my way of thinking, the greatest players ever played the game. So, we're, I'm very aware of that. But having said that, I think because of all the things we have been through footy-wise, that we are mates. Cameron might answer that a little bit differently, but I think like I say, from what we've been through, I think even though he's 30 years younger than me, I think we are mates.
In part 2 of this amazing interview with the modern-day super coach, we talk about the assistants he's helped graduate to the big chair, about his relationships with players, and a whole lot more. If you're enjoying Andy Raymond Unfiltered, before you go, we'd love if you could throw in a 5-star rating and review wherever you're listening. Come back soon, legends. Welcome back to Andy Raymond Unfiltered. In part 1 of the Craig Bellamy story, we spoke about the transformation from normal to not so inside of the coach's box. The sledging continued as he returned serve on good mate Ricky Stewart and his relationship with Cameron Smith. But there's so much more to this amazing story. As a 60-year-old, how do you go with dealing with and understanding younger men's issues, behaviours and reasoning?
Yeah, it's like sometimes it's really nice to have younger coaches. A lot of obviously my assistant coaches are obviously other than Jason Riles, I think all the others are younger than Smithy. So so they understand the younger guys and the younger guys' traits, I suppose, and traits because of the way society is these days. So sometimes I lean on them a bit, and sometimes those younger players, when they have got issues, they'll go to one of the assistant coaches. Yep. So like I say, there's some things that I just probably don't understand at all. But having said that, it's not as if I'm probably a little bit ignorant of them, but I'm not adverse to listening and trying to understand. I think that's the main thing. As long as I, take an interest and try and learn from, someone's predicament or someone's situation. But like I say, it's a lot different to when I was playing footy. The issues these days, but during this time up here, our guys, I know there's been one blemish, but for us to all move away from our home, and most of the guys, is a newfound home in Melbourne, but we've all had to move away from there. Some have had to have been separated from their families, which is certainly not ideal, and that causes some situation as well. And the families that have come up, that they have been so understanding and trusting of the decisions that the club's made and the NRL has made, even though some of those decisions have been really tough sometimes, on the families. But everyone has really stuck together, and while, as I said, it's certainly been far from ideal for our club and the people in our club, I'm really proud of how everyone players and their families, staff and families have handled it. You know, they've been outstanding.
When you turn off football, how do you unwind? What's your escape away from the game and away from the position as head coach?
I think going back, probably 15 years ago, I used to like going to the golf course, but I find, travelling to the golf course and playing golf and then travelling back, it was always too much time wasted or spent.
Yep.
The thing that I really enjoy more than anything else is listening to music.
Yep.
My dad was used to play guitar and used to sing a little bit. He was a mad Slim Dusty, Johnny Horton fan. So used to sit next to the open fire as a family, and Dad used to rip off a few songs. So I've always loved listening to music. So and at the moment, I'm really missing not being able to go and see a concert. With like Jimmy Barnes, the Angels, they're the guys I really love seeing live. So I've really missed that. I like my musicals as well.
Musicals?
So like musicals, so not so much probably the classic ones, but some of the other ones. So like I say, that's probably my main the main thing I spend time on when I'm not spending it on footy and family. So so I'm missing my music at the moment. Obviously I can put on on my phone what's the name and listen, but it's not quite the same as going to a live concert.
I've found a lot of high-profile sports guys that have a certain level of experiences, both good and bad, have a somewhat reduced circle of friends or confidants is probably a better way to put it. A group they confide in, a group they will actually listen to. What's your support group look like? Is it small?
Yeah, it probably is. Actually, I think someone asked me this about a couple of years ago, and I didn't. I probably don't. If I got an issue or a problem, I'm having trouble, sorting it. I don't sort of think I've got to go and talk to such and such, But I've never thought like that. So I've always, I've always thought that I've gone with my gut feel, and I'll sort it out. I'll talk to other people, but people around the situation or people around the problem. But when I thought about it, there probably is a couple that I go to, and they've only come up. Well, I've got to know them since I've been in Melbourne, and that's John Rebo, who was the person that got me to the club. He was the CEO, obviously the owner of the Storm at that time, and he was a CEO for the first couple of years I was there. So I've always kept in touch with Reeves, and he comes still a mad Storms fan. He comes to a lot of the games. And the other guy that again I probably lent on a bit that didn't, when I didn't sort of realise I lent on him, was Roy Masters. So I didn't know Roy until I went to Melbourne. I didn't even know Roy lived in Melbourne actually at that time, but he'd been living there for a fair while. And he got married to Elaine, and she was a Melbourne lady, so that's where he's been. So, and again, Roy being very close to John, I met Roy pretty quickly, after I moved down there, and him being a coach, and certainly quite a infamous coach or a famous coach, whichever way you look at it, with the face slap and whatever. But that's the thing, with Roy, he's very innovative. He's always thinking, probably, or not always, but sometimes he can think outside the square. When I'm not great at that. So when someone mentioned basically that question you asked me there, like I never sort of realised that I probably did rely on a few people, but certainly Reeves and Roy, footy and life as well. And probably one of my mates, again, he loves his footy and has always been involved in footy, but he's not, like actually involved as far as a coach now. The guy I met in Canberra, Gary McDonald. So he's the guy I probably talk to a little bit about, life in general, I suppose.
You just said there you don't always or often look outside the box. Would you consider for the most part, coaches on the side of being cautious or conservative, most intent on looking at a way not to lose a game, as opposed to trying something different that may have an element of risk? It's a fine line.
Yeah, it is. And, I don't think, like all coaches or a high percentage of coaches, are that conservative, to be quite honest. Mm-hmm. I think I probably am.
Okay.
But having said that, I'll in some situations, we'll take risks or look at taking risks. But having said that, that's why I think now it's important that your coaching group has got the right balance. So a couple of guys that have been my coaches over the years, or been my assistant coaches, been the club's assistant coaches, always try and have one of those guys that sort of looks left of centre.
Yep.
And just you want to have that balance in your coaching group. But like I say, I'm probably certainly more conservative than the risk taker. But having said that, sometimes I'll lean that side. But certainly having a couple or at least one guy in your coaching group that has got that sort of personality or has got that trait, I think that really helps the team.
Want to know what's coming up on the Legends series? Stalk us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at @TheAndyRaymond. You mentioned assistant coaches. Stephen Kearney, Brad Arthur, Anthony Seibold, Adam O'Brien, Dean Payne, Michael Maguire, Nathan Brown, Kevy Walters, amongst others. All guys that have been your assistants and part of your system. It's a very established footprint. Does that put a smile on your face knowing you've helped guide a large group of successful young men on their journey?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I don't sort of, we don't go beating our chest about down in Melbourne. Again, obviously they've been assistant coaches for the club, so it's not only me, it's, to be quite honest, a lot of those coaches would learn a lot off our players, Cameron and Cooper and Billy, those sort of guys. I'm really proud of, on behalf of, the Melbourne Storm of how those guys have got their start, I suppose, in their coaching careers with us, or they've come to us at some stage to further their education in being a coach. And, and having gone on to, being NRL coaches and in Kevy's case, an Origin coach. Yep. We're all really proud of them and really, proud of the way all the things that the club has done to help them get where they've got to today.
Does it give you satisfaction to see them progress in their career, or does it piss you off because you lose another assistant?
No. I think I've never really thought too much about it like that. No, we're always happy for those guys to go to a higher position. I think there's a couple of them probably left that were assistants and went to another club as an assistant before they had a head coach. So probably it's hard for me to understand why you went to another job that was the same job in another club. But certainly, certainly, all those guys, have left on a good note. I've never ever. One thing I can say proudly, not proudly, but I've never seen soon as it necessary that I've never sacked a coach at the Storm. I've never told the coach you're on your bike. So they've and sometimes they know when it's time to move on. And but like I say, those guys especially that have gone from being an assistant coach at the Storm to a head coach at other clubs, there's no ill feeling there at all. That's that's what they've worked so hard for, and we're only too happy to let them take that opportunity.
So what you're saying politely is you're mates with some of them, but you're not mates at the moment with others? Is that the politically correct way of putting it?
No, not really. I think I'm pretty much mates with all those guys. I'd be surprised if anyone's got too many ill feelings there. But, like I say, I think all those guys left on like I say, I probably felt at the time, why do you want to go to another club doing the same job? But having said that, there's obviously been a reason that they might not have wanted to share with me. So again, everyone is in that situation as well. But no, all those guys, if I seen all those guys, running into them in the street, or if they rang, I'd be talking to all of them without doubt.
You've coached those guys. Who coached you? Who do you consider your clipboard mentor as such?
Oh, well, I think I was extremely lucky to start my coaching career under Tim Sheens.
Yeah.
And so Tim offered me the job in the 21s when I retired in 92, I think. So I took the President's Cup job on in 93. I think I was with Tim for about 4 years. And then Mel came in as head coach when Tim went to the Cowboys. And so I was promoted to being Mel's assistant.
Yep.
So I coached under Mel for 12 months. And then I went to the Broncos. But when I went to the Broncos, I went there as their performance coordinator.
Yep.
The Broncos had a guy called Stu Nance, who was a very good strength conditioning coach, performance coordinator. He went to the Wallabies. So I went up there as like the performance coordinator, but
Yep.
Wayne didn't have an assistant at that time. And I was, was always busy in the pre-seasons as a performance coordinator. But during the season, I found I didn't have a whole heap to do. So I just sort of, started helping Wayne out a little bit with, they didn't do a lot on the opposition back in those days where Tim, he was always, wanted to know what the other team was doing, when we were playing this weekend. So that was a real difference there in their two styles. But slowly but surely, I sort of ended up, being, I suppose, Wayne's assistant as well as, the performance coordinator's job, and really enjoyed it. So, when people ask me, who I learned off, well, basically Tim Sheens and Wayne Bennett. Mm. So I'm thinking most people are thinking that you've been very, very lucky to work under two guys that have got their experience, but also their records, as head coaches in the NRL. And it's amazing. I suppose I learned a lot of both of them, obviously, but at the same time, I need to, not copy one or not copy everything they did. You need to do the things that you believe in yourself, and take some things and take other things from the other bloke. But the one thing that was a good learning lesson was, I found both those coaches were very, very different in their beliefs and how they did things. Okay. So, and again, that was just a good lesson for me that there's more than one way to skin a cat. And as I said there, just there before, whatever you believe in, you need to make sure that, you never ever go away from that, because that's what's got you into this situation that you're into. So, make sure you live by those beliefs and make sure you trust yourself when you're going to make decisions on, what you do with your footy team, what you do with individuals in your footy team, whatever it is. So, and, like I say, with my time with Tim and my time with Wayne, just goes to show that those guys really believed in what they did.
Griffin Air Conditioning offers the highest quality of air conditioning sales and service across the Sydney metropolitan area, providing installation and maintenance to commercial, domestic and industrial customers. Working with this team, you'll be guaranteed the latest services, technology and developments in the industry. Visit griffinair.com.au and tell them we sent you for a cool deal. Craig, as a game, do we treat sacking the coach as the easy option on too many occasions? Are we unfair on head coaches?
Oh, yeah, I think it's probably the easier option. Yep. That gets taken probably a little bit too often. But having said that, I think every situation there is different situations or different circumstances. Yeah. So I think it's the same for your CEO there, or your chairman, or your board that they've got to make a decision. So they've got to do what they believe in, what they think's important for the club, and what they think's the right thing for the club. So like I don't try and think about when I see a coach that gets sacked or whatever. I don't try and think, is that right or is that wrong? At the end of the day, there's other people there that have made that decision, and they've gone. They'd had their reasons for doing that. Now, whether they're right or wrong, that's not for me to decide, because you're not in there yet. You haven't seen what happened. So, like I say, I think sometimes it's probably the easier way to go. But having said that, like those guys are in those, I suppose, hierarchy positions. That's their decisions to make, and they need to do what they believe's right.
On the field, how much has rugby league changed from, say, 2003 to 2020? Are the players simply just more well-rounded athletes?
Oh, yeah, they certainly are. Like, there's a lot of, I think back to when I was as the performance coordinator at the Broncos, some like the GPSs now and all this other stuff. Like that wasn't around then. And I don't think I'd cut it there now. I'm not smart enough with technology to be what they're doing. But so that's just changed in itself. And sometimes, again, like a lot of things in life, that can be confusing as well, and how your performance team uses those figures. Like sometimes you think, oh, well, we should be doing this with it, but, they look at it in another way. So, I think the players get looked after a lot better, recovery-wise, and what they were getting back then. A lot of times then it was hard work, and a bit more hard work. Whereas now, we're a lot more aware of the recovery and, trying to have them, cherry ripe for, the game at the weekend.
Are you a stats guy? I've always said in commentary, you can make, through statistics, any player or performance look good or any player or performance look poor. How deeply do you look into statistics and analysis?
Yeah, I'm not overly big on stats, but, sometimes, there is something that'll come out of, the stats that does make sense and, will make a difference. We obviously, get stats from different areas, but a couple of my coaches do like our stats, which other companies or whatever will do stats on. But we probably look at it in a bit of a different way, if that makes a little bit of sense. We don't look at the, that stat the way the stats companies do.
Yes.
And there's 4 or 5 stats that we see really important in a game, and that's what our assistant coaches will do. So we think we get good value out of that. Having said that, like I always have a look at the stats after a game, but again, there's some that I might use and there's some that sometimes I don't use. But you've got to just make sure you're having a look, to make sure you get all you need to prepare for the next week. But just I suppose in a short answer, I'm not a big stats guy. No.
Okay. Are you constantly looking at the next evolution of rugby league, or are you more concentrating on trying to perfect the current style of football?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, I've never really thought too much about that. I'd probably say straight away, without thinking about it too much, that I'm just concerned about now.
Yep.
And that's basically what I do in life and do in footy. I don't really concern myself too much, who we're playing in 2 or 3 weeks' time. I'm more concerned who we're playing this week. That's the one that's going to matter.
Yep.
And that's what, that's what I want my players focused in on. So if I want them focused in on that, well, I need to be that too. So, probably just focusing on what we're doing now to get ready for this week. I don't go a whole heap of ahead of that.
What do you reckon the last major shift in how the game was played was? When the style of play or a certain style of play genuinely changed?
Oh, geez, that's a tough question. There's a whole heap of things that have changed over the years, obviously. Yeah, I like to say, I think this year has been a bit of a change with the six again, and probably not so much on the game, but like in that situation. But it's been, and we've experienced it ourselves. I know some clubs haven't, but there's a lot of clubs have. Is about the injuries. Yeah. I think that's probably been, I suppose, amplified by the fact that there's no origin during the year this year. So we had 18 games straight. So we haven't experienced that for I don't know how long, So obviously the origin players, they play every week, but having said that, the clubs usually give them a rest.
Yep.
Like after an origin game or whatever. So there hasn't been too many seasons where we've gone 18 games straight.
Yeah.
And so I think with that, probably not recovering as well as we have in the past few years, and then trying to add speed to the game or keeping the ball in play for longer. Yep. I think so. The big guys. I think that was the idea. The big guys tire, and then the little fast guys come out and play their footy. So I think that has probably changed more than I thought it would, to be quite honest. Okay. So I'm sure when I get off this, I'll think, I should have thought of that. But but it certainly has changed, and I suppose that's again, it's the same as life in general. Everything changes, and most times it's for a reason. Sometimes it doesn't work out like we all wanted it to. Yep. Sometimes it does. So I think footy is the same as life in general.
You're listening to Andy Raymond Unfiltered, the Legends series. We have corporate and private sponsorship packages available. You set the terms. For further information on how you can become part of the team, go to the website andyraymondunfiltered.com.au and hit the sponsorship tab. With the rule changes since the COVID resumption, have you had to change the way you coach the footy side at all, or elements of it?
Not so much. A little bit with the rule changes, obviously. Not so much. About the resumption after COVID, but certainly, and I wouldn't say as far as I coach the footy team, but since we've been moved. Yeah, I've had to be a lot more aware of things off the field. So us being in isolation and us being away from our homes, and some of us being away from our families, there's some things that if someone said, you will do this during this year, I would have said, no, I won't. Yeah. But to make it a bit easier on the players and their families, to, I suppose, work through the issues that we've found ourselves in at times. I've changed our system, or I've changed our routine during the week.
Okay.
And I think most of them would lean towards, I suppose, not doing as much training as we would have done, or not doing as many meetings or longer meetings or whatever. So I think the footy stuff has been cut down a little bit. Mm-hmm. It certainly hasn't been stripped down without a doubt, but there's just some things that we needed to do to make things more comfortable for our players and our families, to survive in this environment. When I say survive, that's like a bit of an overemphasis, but to basically enjoy, or try to enjoy and try to get out as much as we can out of this experience.
You've been a player and a coach. Does a coach make a player, or do 13 players make a coach?
I think of players making a coach, I think there's about 3 or 4 that's made me, but so I don't know whether it's been 13, but I honestly, obviously I think it goes a little bit both ways, but I think, I think, a lot of times I get asked the question, what makes a good coach? And I say a lot of good players, or some good players. And we've had some great players here. So I'm sure I wouldn't have been the coach, or I wouldn't have been a coach for 18 or 19 years here if I didn't have the players that I've had. And I think most people know who I'm talking about there. But so I honestly believe that I've been, and I know I've worked really hard at doing my job as well as I can. But I don't think I would have got the job done, or we wouldn't have got the job done if we hadn't had the players that we had.
There is a sprinkling of names there that will be mentioned for as long as the game is played. Do you acknowledge and do you realise at the time just how special these guys are and how fortunate you are to have them in your footy side, or do you become blasé about it and they're just players? No,
well, I never become blasé about the effect that they've had on our footy club for so long. That's one thing I never become blasé about. It's sometimes it's easy to just to see them as as players, but I see them as people as well.
Yep.
So, and with all due respect, they're as good as people as you'll ever meet as well.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Jack Gibson had a saying, you can't be a dickhead all week and then play good on Sunday, and so basically what you were saying, you need to be a good person to be a good player. And I think, those superstars that we've had here, they've been exactly that. So I certainly don't get blasé about, the effect that they've had on our club, without a doubt. And I suppose the NRL in Melbourne, what they've done for the game down there, but what they've done for the game as a whole. But sometimes you sort of think, someone's a mad Billy Slater fan or Cameron fan, and their nephew's having a birthday. Do you think you could get Cameron to send him a little message and whatever? And you think, like, I don't see him as being superstars and making some kid feel the luckiest kid in the world. So sometimes I've got to pull myself up on that. But certainly I've never been blasé about the effect they've had on this club and on this team.
You've had wonderful players, but also, as you just said, wonderful blokes. And being honest, not every bloke in rugby league is a wonderful guy. Is that still very much a part of your selection process and your recruitment process, picking the right person as well as the right player?
Yeah, without a doubt. That's probably still the main thing for me, to be quite honest. Okay. So it's great to have talent, but at the same time, you need to have the best interest of the team at heart and not just yourself, and that's certainly part of our pick and player process.
Wonderful insight into the coach. Thank you very much for your time. Best of luck in the coming weeks. There should be some wonderful footy. Craig Bellamy, you, sir, are a legend. A new episode of the Legends series drops every Tuesday and the weekly Wodge every Thursday. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening and follow us on social media at The Andy Raymond. Then you won't miss a thing. Come back soon, Legends. If you're enjoying Andy Raymond Unfiltered, the Legends series, we'd love for you to go to Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're listening and subscribe to the podcast and give us a 5-star rating and review. Best weekly review wins an Unfiltered Trucker's hat.